This week, a number of big legal fights for Donald Trump as Democrats across the country and their prosecutors are looking to rig the election and target him, to tie him up in courtrooms and hoping to convict him ahead of the election so as to hurt his candidacy. For more on that, I want to bring in Tom Fitton now, the president of Judicial Watch and the author of A Republic Under Assault. Tom, good to have you back with us, sir.
Vince, good to be with you. Thank you.
There's a lot going on. I also want to talk to you in a moment about some breaking news out of your organization, Judicial Watch, involving the Secret Service. I'll get to that. But first, Donald Trump is appealing to the Supreme Court this week to intervene in the case that he's making that he has immunity from the charges that Jack Smith is trying to level against him from his time in office. What do we know about this?
Well, for the first time in American history, he's being prosecuted for acts that arguably were done in his official capacity. No president's been prosecuted for engaging in the act of being president. And, he wants the court to do a serious review. And what's going on is that Jack Smith and, frankly, the anti-Trump court here in D.C., the appellate court, the lower court, Judge Chutkan, want to bum rush him through a trial as soon as possible so that they can get their conviction before the election. And the question is the Supreme Court going to buy into that and allow that abuse to continue, or say, you know what, we're going to consider this in the ordinary course. This is too serious, and we're not going to let a three-judge panel here in the District of Columbia be the final word as to whether presidents all of a sudden can be prosecuted by virtually anyone in the country for any reason they deem fit. Because I guarantee you that if this rule is changed and the Constitution is reinterpreted to allow presidents to be prosecuted, state prosecutors, county prosecutors, federal prosecutors will all be lining up to indict a president as soon as he puts his hand on the Bible.
Right. Yeah. And then it'll just become, our judicial system will just be used as a grudge match rather than as a way to accurately assess what's going on in our country and to render justice impartially. Instead, it will just be yet another political tool that the left has corrupted.
Yeah. And when you have Jack Smith go to the court and say there's some urgent public need to be resolved as soon as possible, well, why is that the case here other than a political reason? I mean, they want to do it before the election. And I tell you, I was thinking about this, Vince, just how corrupted this Justice Department is. They, we'll talk about Fani Willis. Jack Smith is as corrupt as Fani Willis. I mean, when you engage in a prosecution for purposes other than the public interest and start steamrolling over people's rights, and in this case, Jack Smith is doing it purely for politics because there's no other reason to rush this than because you want to time it to impact the election. That's the worst of the worst. And our Justice Department is irredeemably corrupt. And I just hope whoever the next president is takes reform as job one for that deep state agency.
Yes, we desperately need a house cleaning. No question about that. And it's long overdue. On the issue of Fani Willis, let's move to Fulton County, Georgia. And interestingly, a number of court hearings on Thursday involving Donald Trump. One of them set to take place in Fulton County, Georgia this week, where Judge Scott McAfee is of the opinion that it might be necessary to disqualify Fani Willis, the district attorney, entirely from the case because of an apparent conflict of interest she has by sleeping with her subordinate, who she's enriching by having on the team. Here's Judge Scott McAfee talking about this yesterday.
Specifically looking at Defendant Roman's motion, it alleges a personal relationship that resulted in a financial benefit to the district attorney, and that is no longer a matter of complete speculation. The state has admitted a relationship existed, and so what remains to be proven is the existence and extent of any financial benefit, again, if there even was one. So, because I think it's possible that the facts alleged by the defendant could result in disqualification, I think an evidentiary hearing must occur to establish the record on those core allegations. So just to emphasize, I think the issues at point here are whether a relationship existed.
Yeah, so this is a big deal, and it's such a big deal that Donald Trump himself at this moment plans on attending this hearing on Thursday, Tom Fitton, to bring more attention to it.
Well, I think as we talked about, this is already a corrupted investigation because it's purely political. But with like most tyrants, there's usually a personal side benefit. People are taking advantage of the system to not only abuse their political opponents, but make a little money on the side or advance their personal interests on the side. And here the allegation is that this prosecution is irredeemably bound up in an effort to advance Fani Willis's and her paramour's romantic relationship and obviously their finances. And there's strong evidence now that they lied to the court in explaining what's been taking place to date as to when the relationship began and
right.
otherwise.
Yes, because they insist
that
they insist that the relationship started after he was hired. There apparently is some evidence that no, it started before he was hired.
Right, and to the degree they try to make a distinguishing that well, it started after they were hired and it makes it better. I don't think that's necessarily the epitome of
right.
ethics we want to promote within the prosecution down in Fulton County. But not only do I think these folks need to be removed, at least based on the evidence that's pretty much unrefuted to date, but it raises questions about whether the case at all can go forward. And my view is, how is it anything that they've done? How has it not been tainted by this inappropriate relationship? Were they bringing evidence to the grand jury and pursuing this prosecution for the public interest, for their own personal interest? My view is you either throw it out or you throw it out and say you need to start over. And even being disqualified could be the end of the case, because it could be they can't get another prosecutor to follow up on it, because if Fulton County won't do it, it may be there's no other prosecution team in the state that's willing to do it, because everyone knows it's political and corrupt.
Sure, and also she's advancing a never-before-tested theory of the case that Donald Trump was involved in some sort of RICO violation, an organized criminal attempt to steal the election. It's so crazy that I'd be surprised if there was another attorney who wants to jump on and defend that case.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi can't prosecute the case, so Fani Willis did it for her. When that's what happened. Jack Smith is doing the same sort of game up here in Washington, D.C., with an unprecedented prosecution, novel application of the law. Alvin Bragg, which I guess is who the left is now hoping gets his stab, because it looks like these other cases may be waylaid a bit. For the first time in history, bringing in someone and trying to put him in jail for engaging in a settlement agreement. It's just incredible.
Yeah, it truly is. All right. So we'll keep our eyes on that. But again, Trump obviously thinks this redounds to his benefit. He'll be apparently there on Thursday at that hearing in Fulton County, Georgia, as the prosecutor has been going after him, is now being called before the court for her own problems. It's just so fascinating how that's going down. I do see some Judicial Watch breaking news this afternoon. I'm always grateful for it. You indicate your organization has some information now about Robert F. Kennedy's request for Secret Service protection. This is a guy who has been constantly threatened on the campaign trail, including at one point somebody posing as a U.S. Marshal and carrying a gun went to his campaign event. I believe that was in California. He's been saying, I need Secret Service protection. Right now, he's paying for his own security. Tell us what you've learned about his requests to be protected on the campaign trail.
Well, they were given short shrift, and he requested the protection, and he wasn't granted it. And we had gotten some documents initially. We'd asked for others, got the runaround, so we had to file a lawsuit in federal court. In the first batch of documents they gave us last week, Vince, confirmed that it's the Secretary of Homeland Security, Secret Service is part of that agency, that has the discretion ultimately to make that call, and so does the president. And then we found out in a second batch of documents, indeed it was Mayorkas who made the call and declined to provide Secret Service protection for Kennedy. And what's interesting in the documents say, the law was changed to expand Secret Service protection for presidential candidates after this man's father was murdered and assassinated, Robert F. Kennedy. And I don't know about you, but personally, I am disgusted by the way the Biden administration has handled this. What's the harm in making sure, given his last name, that he gets the extra protection that ordinarily maybe another presidential candidate wouldn't yet receive?
Sure.
Well, is it that hard to figure out a scenario where he might be at extra risk.
Well,
and of course, they had information that he was being threatened.
Yes.
Now, I know all public officials and public people, a lot of people in policy get threatened, at least at the high political levels like this. But the Kennedy name, I'm not saying vote for Kennedy. I'm not saying vote against him. But, let's just put aside nasty politics and make sure the guy isn't going to be harmed unnecessarily. Well, I just can't believe we're at this stage.
The nasty politics that appear to be animating this are that that the Biden administration doesn't want to dignify his candidacy to suggest that he's a real candidate by even affording him Secret Service protection. That's my hunch about this whole thing. They don't want to give him Secret Service protection because it would give the appearance of a legitimate candidacy, and they want to undermine that claim.
Yes, and what's interesting is they supposedly consulted there's a board that provides advice and counsel on this, made up of senior leadership in the House and Senate. And it looked like, reading between the lines, that Senator McConnell was pushing for this, and there was maybe some pushback from others. So I'd be interested to know what those leaders in Congress thought about this decision by Mayorkas not to provide him protection. And I tell you, this is a dangerous game the Biden administration's playing. And if Mayorkas pretended that the rules mandated he do it this way, then it's up. This is where the president comes in and says, you know what, he's going to get the protection. And if it means he gets more votes than he otherwise would have gotten, that's good, but at least I can sleep at night knowing he's better protected.
Well, at least Mayorkas is being consistent. He doesn't protect anyone. So that's
what I was trying to put that in the release. It's, he's not protecting the border.
Yeah.
It's no surprise he's not protecting an innocent American like RFK.
Nope.